All right, I've gotten the line cord installed. It's just your standard garden variety vinyl line cord, rated for 13 amps, I believe. Did a UL knot right here, and then the line cord goes to a fuse holder, goes through the fuse, and then comes out, and I have it going through this red wire right here that goes off to a thermistor, a CL90 thermistor, and then off to the switch. The other side of the line cord just kind of wraps around the red wire, goes to this terminal strip and goes to the transformer, thus completing the primary circuit of the transformer for the radio. I've gotten all the other things installed, got all the transformer wires connected to their points. I'll remove all this tape. These tape labels, they were just to help me with the reassembly. Gotten all the components that need to be replaced. This thing is ready to rock and roll. You've already seen the RF chassis. It's ready, so it's time now to marry the two chassis together and have this start looking like a regular radio. All right, I'm ready to install this tuner chassis onto the main chassis. I've got some new rubber grommets on here that I got from Renovated Radios. These are always nice grommets. They're just the right size, and they have a thicker side and a thinner side, and the thicker side is just the right thickness to fit over the standoffs on this chassis, so it's going to be perfect. I'm going to block this chassis up in the air about 2 inches with a couple of 2x4s so that I can drop this chassis down into the hole. I taped all the loose wires out of the way so that when I'm dropping this chassis down in the hole, they don't get stuck. The idea here is to get the chassis down onto these 4 standoffs so that these rubber grommets straddle those standoffs. And to do that without catching anything in the opening as you're doing it. So like I said, I taped the wires out of the way so that they didn't cause me problems. And I simply drop that down onto the standoffs like that. Piece of cake, really. And then I'll put the screws down on there with these washers. There are 4 little fender washers and 4 screws with 4 star washers. I'll go ahead and put those in. This might be a good time for my grabber screwdriver. We'll see. Of course, it would be a good time for any screwdriver at all because I don't have one in my hand. I don't want to put them down too tight right away, just enough to secure it in place. And I don't want to put it down too tight at all anyway, because the last thing I want to do is squish that grommet out of shape. Now, the standoffs will help prevent me from going too far. That's part of the point of the standoffs. Those of you paying attention will notice that transformer is a little bit crooked. That's because the holes are crooked. I tried really hard to straighten this thing, and there's no way to make it any more straight on the chassis than that. There. Get a little bit of suspension action going on. Get these wires out of here. The balls in this thing were a little bit corroded, I think, because I cleaned them and polished them the best I could, but it's still a hair on the rough side. Not a lot I can do about that. It seems to be working okay, and it's a lot nicer when you turn it with the small fine-tuning. There you have it, the basic chassis. It's heading into the final stages of reassembly. I've got a few things to do, like, touch up this up here where I use the rust preventive now, or the rust stopping. Now it's cured enough that I should be able to put some silver up here. So I'll take care of that. Let's see, I'll put some lamps in these lamp holders, and I'll install those. But we're getting real close, guys. I've got a lot of wires now to connect up underneath. So I better get to work on that. Let me show you how this transforms the whole underside of the radio. It went from being a fairly spacious and easy to work on radio to being a little bit more of a mess. That's not terrible, but it's going to be a little bit more challenging now. But I've got to reconnect all those wires that I loosened, or that I took loose when I started this radio. This is when you're glad that you've labeled things, guys. It really is. Let me get this tape out of here. This is when you're glad that you made drawings and you made video and things like that. When you've got to put all this stuff back, and it's literally weeks or maybe even months after you took it out, you've got to figure out where it all goes. Now, a lot of times, if you don't replace the wires, which is one of the reasons I don't, the wires themselves will tell you kind of where they want to go. That's only if you've left the original wires in, and that can be real helpful. So I'll utilize that, and I'll go ahead and get all these connected up. That'll be pretty boring. I'm not going to bore you with it, so I'll do that off camera. On July 2nd of 1937, this lady, Amelia Earhart, who has long been one of my heroes, by the way, was lost as she was searching for Howland Island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. She was low on fuel and had lost her bearings. The U.S. Coast Guard ship Itasca had been in kind of rough contact with her off and on as she was trying to find where she could land the plane. It's believed she finally ditched the plane, and no trace has ever been found of her. Here she is standing in front of the plane she was flying, a Lockheed Electra. I think it's a Model 10 Junior. It's a beautiful aircraft. In fact, it's in my opinion, the Lockheed Electra is one of the most beautiful aircraft ever built. Here are some other pictures of some other Lockheeds. This one here is actually still flying. And here's another one, beautiful. This one here is another Model 10. And they're just gorgeous aircraft. And I believe this one right here is a Model 12. It's flying over California in this photograph. And if you consider when this airplane was built in the mid-1930s, it was pretty modern for its time. In fact, a lot of the characteristics on this airplane are still present in airplanes being built right now. I told you that Amelia Earhart was one of my heroes. And here's one of the reasons why. Never interrupt someone doing something you said couldn't be done. When I was a kid building and flying model airplanes, and I'd get stuck or I'd crash one and be pretty downhearted about it, I would just read about Amelia Earhart, and she'd inspire me to keep trying. The list of issues with this Westinghouse WR-212 is pretty long. Among the issues that I may or may not have talked about yet is that the original speaker in this radio has a bad field coil. This is how I found it. I didn't tear all this apart. This is exactly how I found this radio. And someone disconnected what looks like they disconnected the field coil wires, probably because the field coil was bad. It's open, by the way, and you can, if it's hard for me to show you, but you can see the field coil wire here, and it's broken. And I don't know what they were thinking they would do. They cut the wires. I don't know if they were thinking they could maybe make it work as a non-field coil speaker. Who knows? But all, it's a mess. It's not worth trying to repair this speaker. I do believe that the output transformer is good. So I found a replacement speaker for this. But the replacement speaker does not have an onboard output transformer. It came from a radio that had the output transformer built into the chassis. So I'm going to remove this output transformer and figure out a way to mount it in the either on the speaker that I'm going to put in with this radio, or in the cabinet somewhere. And so what I've got to do is get this thing off of the terminal strip that's mounted on this speaker. All right, so I've gotten the secondary leads disconnected from the speaker. So I had loosened it, and there's one, I've got to remove this screw, and then that should drop right off. All right, great. My notes tell me that that it was the field coil that was bad on this speaker, and not the output transformer. All I need to do is make sure that both the primary and the secondary windings have continuity. Okay, so 430 ohms on the primary, and on the secondary, let's see, what I measure just to be sure. And I get about 0.8 ohms. About 0.8 ohms on the secondary. I want to check something out real quick. Make sure that makes good sense. The voice coil, 3.5 ohms, so it's small, and this is small, so that makes sense. I have to figure out a way to mount this either to the speaker or to the inside of the radio cabinet. Another alternative solution would be to mount this transformer right here to the side of the chassis. Now I've got to mount a big resistor as well to fill in the gap that the speaker field coil of the replacement has, but I could mount them both to the side of the chassis, and that might work out. First I'm going to look at mounting it to the speaker. This is the speaker, and there really isn't a good place to mount this to it. So I may have to just bite the bullet and mount it to something else. Alright guys, the time is almost here. Oops, let me turn the TV down. Sorry about that, guys. I might just leave that in there. That's about the coolest band that ever played music. I've listened to Rush since I was 14 years old, and I've seen them. I think last time I saw them was about 2 years ago, and that was my 8th time. All right, let me show you what I got going on here, guys. I am really close to firing this up for the first time. But let me tell you about some of the issues I ran into. First off, the thing had some bad tubes, so I had to replace some tubes. You see some new ones there. He gave me some new ones with the radio, but he did not have a rectifier, so I got a nice 5Y3 that tests really strong. And he needed one more 6K7 than he had, and he needed a 6A8, and I had both of those, so you see those tubes are nice and new. This thing is pretty much ready to rock and roll. I suspect those lamps on the top will not work because I have not cleaned the paint off yet. I'm not sure where the dang things mount, so I don't want to clean the paint off till I know that. I told you about this speaker that had a really messed up field coil. This is the original speaker, and it's really pretty jacked up. Well, I just saw this as a lost cause to really try to do anything with. I took the transformer off of it already. Here is the power supply and output stages of this radio. And you'll see there's a 5Y3 there. And then if you look real close, I have some notes written here. The field coil is open there toward the bottom. And there I have the DC resistance measurements I took of the output transformer and of the voice coil of the speaker. So the output transformer has 430 ohms on the primary and 0.6 ohms on the secondary, and the voice coil is 4.3 ohms. This is with everything disconnected, so they didn't interfere with each other. That is confirmed if I look at this DC resistance chart that is put there with the schematic. speaker coil shows 1800 ohms is what it's supposed to be, DC resistance. Output trans is supposed to, it says 450 on the primary and 0.5 on the secondary, so that's pretty close. That's pretty close to what I'm getting. Voice coil is showing, there we go, looks like 3 ohms. So I'm measuring 4.3. Again, close enough. I think we're pretty good. So that tells me the target DC resistances that I'll be shooting for. And so I started looking around. I looked at a Philco speaker, but it didn't mount right. It was just the wrong shape. Philcos have kind of a strangely shaped basket. It wasn't going to work. And I yanked this speaker out of a GE A31. It's the right size. The field coil is not quite there, but it's close enough that it would have worked. But the output transformer did not mount on the speaker on this one. So if I'm going to have to mount an output transformer off the speaker and start messing around with adding resistance to make up for the field coil difference, then I might as well just put a permanent magnet speaker in there and make it easy for the guy if he ever has to replace it. So I started looking at permanent magnet speakers, and I have this one out of an old Crosley, but that one didn't look like it was going to really be up to snuff. And then I remembered, about 3 years ago, I'd gone into a thrift store, a local thrift store here, and I bought a whole basket full. I mean, we're talking about 25 of them, of these Electro Voice permanent magnet speakers that are coaxial. In other words, there's a main bass driver, and then there's a small mid-range driver that sits coaxial with the bass. And I remember testing these, and they sounded really nice. They're 8 ohm speakers, and that original Westinghouse speaker over there is a 4 ohm speaker, or approximately. It's actually 4.3 ohms. So all I had to do on this guy here was to I soldered it. It worked out to be a 10 ohm resistor across there, and the resistor actually measured at 9.6 ohms. So with that across that voice coil, and I get exactly 4.3 ohms. So that's pretty good, pretty damn good. And then I took the original output transformer and I mounted it on a little block in there. And then I'm going to also mount, because now I don't have field coil for the power supply, the filtering in the power supply. So I went and I bought a 2K resistor, and I bought an adjustable one in case I have to adjust it. And I'll tinker with it if I need to. But first we'll check it out at full. It's measured out at 1997. All right, so I'll go ahead and install this bugger right in there. And now the thing is, that'll have high voltage going to it. And so what I'm going to need to do, since this thing is going to be exposed there, is I will make a Masonite back for this radio just to make it safe. I don't need some kid sticking his hand in there and getting zapped. I just think that would be bad news. But anyway, so I'm going to test it with this resistor and see how I do. I already have increased the capacitance in the power supply. Where there's a 16, I actually put a 22. And then where there was an 8, I put a 10, and so forth. So I've already bumped up the capacitance in the power supply. So I really think that between the extra capacitance and this wire wound resistor, power resistor, is a 43, no, this one here is a 50 watt resistor, wire wound. Between those things, I think I should be fine on the power supply filtering. We'll see how it does. We'll see if I have any hum. We'll see if anything runs hot. I'm going to set up, guys. I'll get ready to fire this baby up and see what we come up with. Oh, by the way, there's the transformer that was originally on that Electro Voice speaker. And that EV speaker really was part of a PA system. And all these speakers, I mean, really, literally, 25 of those speakers, they were all like brand new. It's like they'd never been used. And with nice gaskets and covers and they had speaker grill covers and everything, little metal grills. All right, guys, well, I'll give this a shot and we'll see how we do. I learned this from smart people like Bob Anderson, and I think that Buzz has done this a time or two. I'm going to fire it up without the rectifier so I won't get high voltage. That will tell me if the filament, all the filaments are good, there's no shorts there. It'll tell me if there's shorts in other places in the radio. It'll tell me if the transformer windings are good, that kind of stuff. But again, I'm not going to hit it with high voltage. I have put a fuse in it. I did put a fuse holder on this, by the way. I have put a fuse in it, so it's ready to go there. And the isolation transformer is on. I'm going to turn the variac on now. I'm going to go ahead and raise the variac up. And I'll do this pretty quickly because I'll either see a spike in current or I'll see a problem or I won't. So I'm at 60 volts. Current has barely moved. 75 volts. Okay, I do have lights right here. As I suspected, I don't have lights up here. So I imagine these are just, they're not grounding properly. So I'll have to, yeah, that's just a grounding thing. I'll have to sort that out. All right, 90 volts. The one glass tube that I can see filament is this 6K7 over here between the two IF cans, and it is light, the filament is lit. I know the 6.3 volt winding is good because of that filament, and these lamps are lit. Let's go up to 120 volts, and I'm not even at 1/4 of an amp, so I'm doing okay. All right, so let's shut this down. I'm going to go ahead and put this 5Y3 in there now. This is a really strong testing 5Y3. The radio came to me with a 5U4 in there, and if I have to look up the data sheet, but I think that will make the voltages all too high. Anyway, I'm going to put this, it's supposed to have a 5Y3, so in it goes. Now I'm going to be a little bit more careful watching the current. 45 volts. Ammeter has not moved much. Go up to 60 volts. I'll make sure the volume knob is turned up. Yep, it is. All right, 70 volts. Let's let it sit there for a minute. I do see dim filament glow on the 5Y3, so that's good. And I don't see the current hasn't spiked or anything silly like that, so I don't have any shorts. Let's bump it up now. 90 volts. Usually between 90 and 100 volts, I'll start to hear something. I'm hearing a very tiny hum in that speaker. That's actually good. It tells me the audio is working. 100 volts. Since I'm hearing some hum, let me see if tuning it does anything. Hey, check it out. 110 volts. Hear that? Oh, guys, that's cool. The reason I'm so excited about this one is I hear virtually no hum. And I was real worried about the power supply filtering that I would hear hum. I got nothing, man. No hum. It's beautiful.
Because we have underestimated and taken that for granted.
And that speaker has a nice tone.
Was going to happen. And that's why it has that
real nice tone. Let's go up to 120 volts.
Less than a week before it happens, between Golden State and Cleveland, the trilogy with Game 1.
Now,
but I got this question.
It's on full blast right now, so I may have an issue there a little bit.
When will it get old? It's nice now, ain't it?
But at least I know the RF is working, the audio is working.
I can't wait.
I may have some impedance matching to check on that speaker. Don't know yet.
All that action, man, this is going to be live. This is going to be large.
But at 123 volts, I'm pulling about half an amp. So that's really good. Oh, you know what? I don't even have an antenna hooked up, guys. That's probably part of my volume issue. So before I do much of anything else, let me hook up my long wire antenna. I've gotten to the point now where I just leave a long wire antenna draped through the basement and hope that nobody comes around and sees it and thinks I'm a little bit nuts. So let's put some light on the subject so I can hook that antenna up. I hope that's the only issue, because it is a little bit quiet. I got to be careful what I'm touching here, because I got high voltage sitting over here on this this resistor. I may want to just turn. You know what? I don't want to do something stupid. So okay, so I'm going to put this antenna on here, and hopefully that'll clean me right up. I also do not have the tuning eye hooked up yet. It's okay, radio will still play without that. It's no big deal. All right, let's bump her back up now and see what we get. 90 volts. Gosh, almost no hum, man. It's beautiful. Turn off this lamp. There we go. 110 volts. Let's see what happens.
When you get older.
Oh, yeah.
Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, people talk about that rivalry.
I have some alignment to do. I can see that. But remember what I did here, guys. I had to repair an IF. I replaced every cap, including some micas, which I didn't show you, but I replaced a couple of micas that were in the RF circuit. So I've done a lot, man. This radio was a wreck.
Last year when it happened, when it was 2 in a row?
All right.
So it's
That's at 110 volts. Let's go to 120.
Make sports.
All right.
There's a reason why college football fans drive a lot of you crazy.
That's going to be fine.
They talk about their rivalry.
No one will even know it's missing.
Oh, this is beautiful, man.
There's just one more. His calling us says, "Follow me," to become a disciple of Jesus.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful, man. Now this lamp here is barely lit. That paint is probably mildly conductive, and that's why it's lit a little bit. Yeah, see when I move it, look at that. It gets brighter.
Stadium, it's the Braves and the big giant flag, and if you look, you'll see there are two different pictures that I had put up. It's an actual tweet, and it's the actual American flag, and you can see all the American flags.
Let's try this
now.
now.
Right, brought out. Or
I like to go right around the variac now. Go straight into the isolation transformer.
to the field at the
Yep,
Atlanta Braves
takes away a lot of
opening
noise.
series game, and in background had Donald Trump's picture as well.
That's beautiful, man.
Maybe a couple of American flags around there. Now you tell me which
That
one of
speaker,
those is.
that electro voice speaker
When
has
you think about it in your
fantastic
head,
tone.
you see,
There we go.
Broadway shows with a million.
You knew I was going there. You knew I was going to go to KSOP at some point. See, John from Arkansas has WSM, I believe. That's cool. They out of Nashville. I think it's Nashville. WSM out of Nashville. Anyway, I got KSOP out of Salt Lake, and it doesn't get any better than that because it's right here in town, and they play all the same oldies, man.
Better picture.
Oh, hell
Nancy
yeah.
Pelosi is complaining because I love this clip. I've been playing it.
All right, guys. I'll tell you what.
This is the House Minority
I'm
Leader.
going to give the radio a rest now.
Perhaps said I thought it was unusual for the President of the United States.
Because what I wanted to know was whether this radio was going to work. Now, let me check the temperature. Ooh, that rectifiers are always hot, guys. Just to let you know. But the transformer is icy cold. Perfect. Let me just touch this output transformer. Nope, it's not hot. Let's see, it's unplugged. All right, so I can touch this. That resistor's only a hint of warm. Now, I haven't been playing it for long, but I think I sized everything just right. This resistor is just barely a hint of warm. I think this is going to work out fantastic, man. I thought this radio was almost a lost cause because it had a bad field coil in the speaker, had at least one bad IF transformer. It was so rusty when I first took it on that you couldn't even, it was all corroded. You couldn't even turn the tuning condenser. There was all kinds of signs that other bad stuff had happened. There'd been some hacking done inside, wrong capacitors, extra capacitors, all kinds of goofiness going on. I didn't think I wanted to do this radio, but it was a really nice guy, and he loved the radio, and he said he wasn't in a hurry. So it took me forever to figure out the speaker thing because I tried to find an original speaker and I just gave up. But I'm glad now because this taught me some things, and I now know a little bit. I mean, I know a lot of you guys do this all the time. You put in a permanent magnet speaker. That's cool, but I've only done it a few times, and this time is one that I planned out really well, and it just worked great, man. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a lot of the finishing touches on this radio. I will align it. I'm not gonna bore you with the alignment because you've all seen that. You know, you've seen me align radios. It's probably more exciting to watch the grass grow in my backyard than it is to watch me align a radio. So I'm going to go ahead and do a lot of the cleanup stuff and kind of get this radio ready to put back in the cabinet. The chassis looks really good. I'm real happy with it. This paint turned out well. The transformer turned out well. I scuffed it up a little here. I'm going to have to touch that up. Just in every way, everything's working out. So very good, productive night, guys. And it is Friday night. Geez, what's the date? I think it's the 26th of May. You probably won't see this video for a few days because I'm a few days behind on these things, but you'll see it in a few days. All right, guys, this is Michael from Salt Lake City. That's all for now.